Welcome to week 5. Well, we hope you're enjoying your course, and of course if there's anything you need, any assistance with anything, please just ask. Make sure you keep sharing what you're learning with a work colleague or a family member, maybe your manager. This will help you practice the important skill of stakeholder engagement. So, what questions are we looking at this week? The first one is that why are data privacy, consent and ethics more important now? Now this is probably pretty obvious because compared with a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, there's so much more data that's been created. And data that's been created that can be personally identified to an individual or an organisation, including you. You may even consider the data, as you will in an exercise in this course, that's been created about you even before you were born. We also have a lot more data that's external, and the access to others is important as well. For instance, who has access to your Facebook or LinkedIn details? Policing authorities, friends, former colleagues, employers, etc. Data can be much more easily joined together now, even across systems, and things like mobile numbers and emails are used to connect information from different sources. And this is very much a feature of Customer Relationship Management Systems, CRM, because they want to build a much stronger profile of who you are as a customer or a potential customer. And this also happens in the area, for instance, of health research. So there's usually good intent behind these things. However, data can be misleading and incorrect. So just say you've decided not to give consent to a particular piece of information being shared about you. It might be that someone has seen all the other information about you, has an incomplete picture. Data can be misleading when it hasn't been maintained or it's used out of context. And here we see the whole space of dynamic tension. Our lives are made much better through data. Our lives at work, our lives at home. However, there's a dynamic tension between knowing more versus not knowing. And this is why the concepts of consent and ethics are really important. And the costs of protection are important to be considered. And another thing that's key to this is like who owns the data? So data that you have created, photos you've uploaded say on Facebook, photos of things you've added in an email, who owns all of that? Who has access to it? So there's not usually one correct answer, but it's very important that you go through the process in any project to do with data of these things early on. What are good practices then in data privacy, consent and ethics? So as I mentioned on the previous slide, design from the beginning. There have been projects that have outright failed, not able to be delivered, or have actually underestimated themselves in time and cost because they haven't considered important issues around consent, what data is needed, the ethics of what they're doing at the beginning. Use quality resources guide to guide you in this area. So here in Australia we have the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, but there's lots of other great resources around. So practical guides about what to do and not what to do, but also making organisations aware of what their legal responsibilities are in this space. Involve the affected stakeholders. And this may be citizens, it may be consumers in a study, and start to build basically a partnership where we want to make use of your data in this way to provide this benefit or to understand you better. And you may be surprised that they may be willing to provide a lot more information than you'd even initially anticipated. But the important thing is that whoever's affected by the consent or privacy and ethics should be involved in that process, them or their representative. Build consent into data collection methods. So there's often a case where you're providing your personal details and you have to tick a box and you're asked to opt in or opt out of certain things. So be very about what you're doing individually, and if you're part of an analytics team that's designing data collection methods, be clear about when you're asking for data and what for. There's some great examples around this about how to do it well. Now another growing area in this is particularly get into the advanced analytics is transparency in algorithms, machine learning and AI. This is a growth area and a challenging area because increasingly, particularly with things like deep learning algorithms, it becomes harder and harder to actually understand how, given all the inputs, a particular determination was made. So in this space of ethics and consent, it's really important that you can get as much transparency as possible in this space. Our next question is really recognising that data is no longer held just within servers in an organisation. So we're going to have a look at what are good practices for the internationalisation of data. So once again, there's a theme here: design from the beginning. Take account of access, cost and risk. And there's actually a great example from Gartner in your reading for this week's topic. You want to consider, where is my data? If you're making use of the cloud and different data centres, just be mindful that different rules apply. So data sitting in a server in Australia, Singapore, US and Europe all have different regulatory regimes associated with data storage. Be mindful of data at rest and data in transit. Be mindful that network issues might cause delays in data being delivered or even missing data. This is a particular case with big data. Missing data could actually lead to incorrect decisions, particularly when that data is not showing up, maybe an anomaly that's not visible, or there's a need for near real-time decision making. So one advice in this area is basically greater dependency on contractual mechanisms. So increasingly organisations will rely more on data that they're not responsible for collecting or maintaining. And the data they do collect and maintain may be sitting on systems that are outside their internal organisation IT. So this is where your contractual mechanisms will become more and more important. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, there's lots of bad examples out there where things have gone wrong. So as an analytics professional working hand in hand with IT professionals, learn from that. And our final question is, what security considerations should be taken into account? Now, we may wonder why there's a picture of a baby in there. It's because this is a complex area and we could end up having a whole course just around security. So take baby steps and take it carefully. Once again, design at the beginning. Try not over-engineer for every scenario, but try to anticipate as much as possible what the particular project you're working on at the moment is trying to achieve. So work out at the beginning who should have access for which decisions. Now, the project done well will have already identified which stakeholders are going to be benefiting from the analytics project, which decisions are actually going to be using information. So the security relating to that data shouldn't be that much of an extra step. So you want to consider roles, external parties, and of course the risk of not having all the information. Because you may find as you go through that process is that you make some decisions, well, these people actually shouldn't have access to the data. But if that significantly impedes the decisions they need to make, you then got a case of the business risk of poor decisions weighed up with the data risk of the privacy. So these are trade-offs you always need to consider. Make sure you align the front end and back end when you come into technical implementation. You can have security applied at many different levels: database, network, application service, etc. So trust me, make it easier by trying to have those things line up. It also means that to be flexible, you're be in a much better position. Be aware of external and internal threats. So it's not a case of set your system up and leave and forget. So that unfortunately there are people who will be actively trying to undermine your system, sometimes they do it unintentionally, just through sharing data they shouldn't via an email or through passwords that are poor. So be aware of this and be prepared. Okay, hope you enjoy this week.